Councilmember Councilmember Sander.
Here.
Councilmember Budge.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Pulapati will be absent for this meeting. Vice Mayor Terry.
Here.
Mayor Gatewood.
Here. All right. Let me give her a map. So I'm going to ask the clerk to read the playback schedule.
The meeting of the Rancho Cordova City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will air Thursday, February 4th at 6 p.m. and Sunday, February 7th at 6 p.m. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch. A copy can also be ordered from the City Clerk's Department, and a webcast of this meeting will be available on the city's website within 48 hours of adjournment of this meeting.
Thank you. And so at this point, I'm going to ask, looks like we have Micah. Micah, can you go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance? Waiting for it.
Sure. You can stand with me, your side. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to the
and to the republic for which it
stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. All right, and now I'd like to call on Michael Dack with the United Church of Christ for an invocation.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to members of all the faith communities to offer opening prayer for the City Council. I'm Michael Dack. I live in Lincoln Village, and I'm a retired pastor in the United Church of Christ. And so I invite you to be in prayer. Creator and sustainer of all life, we are so conscious as we begin the second month of 2021 that we continue to live in a time of challenge and crisis. As we gather online today, we are tired and energized, thankful and in mourning, despairing and hopeful, and all the spaces in between. We are also in a time of transition, a time of new beginnings, with newly elected and appointed leaders at the national, state, and local levels. So I pray that we can be more hopeful than despairing, hopeful that policies, legislation, and actions at all levels of government will be responsive to people's needs. That the COVID-19 vaccine may be made available to everyone as soon as possible. That those who are sick may be cared for, those who are homeless may be sheltered, those who are hungry fed, that victims of injustice may be heard. For we know that each one of us wants to be seen and acknowledged, that each one of us seeks safety and security for those we love, that each of us hungers for opportunity to make a better life for ourselves and our families. So thank you for this nation, this state, and this city in which we live. Thank you for leaders who have stepped up to serve, as well as all the workers it takes to do what needs to be done. God of wisdom and compassion, be with our leaders day by day. Guide them and encourage them. Help us as citizens and as leaders work together to strengthen our community. And help us to trust that your power for good is at work in the world. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, at this moment, I'd like to ask Edgar Medina and Christina Cordy to announce our new employees.
Mayor Gatewood, council members Good evening. I'm Edgar Medina, Public Works Department, CIP Division. I am pleased to introduce Christine Cordy. She's our new Associate Engineer in our division and will be helping us deliver capital improvement infrastructure projects. She's been with the city for just under a month and has been already taking on some great projects. With that, I'll pass it along to Christine. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Christine Cordy. I'm the newest member of the Public Works Department. I'm excited to be working with Edgar and Albert and managing some of the exciting projects that the City of Rancho Cordova is undertaking. I have over 10 years experience managing public works projects in both the private and the public sector. My most recent experience has been in Southern California with the City of South Pasadena. I was born and raised in Sacramento, just down Sunrise Boulevard and City of Citrus Heights, and enjoyed biking on the American River Parkway and doing many fun activities in Northern California. And I'm excited to be back in the area now that I have 2 young girls and offer them similar experiences. So I look forward to working with all of you and managing a lot of the exciting projects in the city.
Great.
Welcome to the team.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Adam, you're Gazoon guy.
Thank you.
And then can we go ahead and, is Brenda Roach there for employee milestones?
Hello. Good evening, Mayor Gatewood, council members, and staff. This is Brenda Roach, the Human Resources Manager for the city. I'm happy to share with you this evening that we have 4 team members who have reached significant years of service milestones with the City of Rancho Cordova. Twice a year, we like to bring to your attention and recognize our employees who have served the community with 10 and 15 years of service. As an organization, we feel it is important to recognize our employees as they reach these major milestones. Our success as a city is directly attributed to the commitment and the valuable contributions of our employees. It is with great pleasure that I have the opportunity to introduce Michael Rodriguez. Michael was originally hired in 2005 as a contract employee to implement our animal services program. In 2007, Michael was hired full-time with the city as a code enforcement officer. Michael has been instrumental in team player in our neighborhood services division and served our community as a utility player both in animal services and a code enforcement capacity. I believe Michael is joining us this evening. Michael, do you have anything you want to add? I see you're on mute. No? Cyrus, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Brenda. The only thing I would like to add is that I've had the honor and privilege of working with Michael and other members of our neighborhood services. They are a highly dedicated and committed team to this community, and I really would want to take this opportunity to thank them for all they do. This last year, during the pandemic, has been very difficult on members of our team providing the services, especially the members of our neighborhood services, as they try to navigate with new rules and policies that are handed down to us from state or federal government and or the county health officer. And they've done an outstanding job in staying on top of the new guidelines and being able to keep us and the community safe. So I thank them for the work they've done.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You entered 976 192777121. This meeting ID does not exist. Please enter your participant ID followed by... You have joined the meeting as an attendee and will be muted throughout the meeting.
I would like to thank Michael also, because Michael is a very talented animal control officer.
The host would
and
like
he's
you to
one of the
unmute your
people who
microphone.
really cares about animals.
You are
in the
unmuted.
community. So whenever there has been a stray dog or something like that that needed reporting, you can call, and Michael, to the extent that he is able, will absolutely be there to help that animal get where it needs to be, or at least to get it out of danger. So personally, I've called him several times. So personally, taking over where Cyrus can't talk anymore, I would say thank you, Michael. Absolutely.
I apologize, Council.
Thank you, Michael.
We had a technical difficulty, so I'm not sure how much you heard, but I just wanted in summary to say that the members of our neighborhood services team, including Michael and other officers, have done an outstanding job during the time of pandemic in giving the services in light of all the restrictions and the new guidelines and policies that we have received. So I wanted to express my appreciation and thanks to this team.
All right, Brenda, anyone else?
Yeah, the next individual I'd like to recognize is Esther Panel. Esther was hired in January of 2009 as the city's first senior accounting technician. Over the last 15 years, Esther has become one of the city's subject matter experts related to accounts payable and accounts receivable. Esther is very diligent about reviewing, analyzing, interpreting, processing all things finance. So I'd like to recognize Esther for her 15 years of service. Unfortunately, Esther will not be able to join us this evening. So, Cyrus, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Once again, I've also had the pleasure of working with Esther for the last 15 years since she has joined the city. She's very diligent in the work she does. Her role is not very visible. She's behind the scenes, but she's the one who makes sure that all of our bills are paid, our lights stay on, and that we are able to function. So thank you, Esther, for the wonderful work you've done. We have a large number of employees who have very critical functions behind the scenes, and unfortunately, they don't often get the opportunity to be in front of the council or in front of the community. But our work and our services to the community highly depend on them, rely on the work they do. So I want to take this opportunity not only to thank Esther for the work she has been doing, but also to all the members of our team who do the work behind the scenes and keep us going. So thank you.
Thirdly, I'd like to recognize Todd Humphrey. Todd was hired in January of 2006 as the city's first facility services manager due to his wealth of experience. Over the past 15 years, Todd has taken great pride in managing and maintaining our city-owned buildings and properties. An interesting fact about Todd, he is a graduate of Leadership Rancho Cordova Class 7 that took place in 2012 and 2013. I believe Todd is on the phone with us. Todd, would you like to say anything to celebrate this momentum occasion? I see unmuted, but I don't know if he wants to speak.
I was also stationed at Mather, and we thank him for his service.
Cyrus, do you have anything to add?
While we're waiting for Todd, I also want to point out that Todd has been around the City Hall since the day it opened, and he has been a critical team member in making sure that our facilities stay in great shape, are open to the community, are inviting, and are being well maintained. So thank you, Todd, for the work you've done. Todd is also very involved in the community. He serves on the board of Cordova. He has served on the board of Cordova Community Council. He is only a few minutes away from the City Hall, and we've called him on Sundays, on weekends when we've had an issue with the City Hall. So he's always been able and ready to help with any issues that we've had. So thank you, Todd, for the work you've done. I appreciate your service to this community.
And lastly, I would like to recognize Jeanette Cervantes. Jeanette began her career at the city in February of 2006 in the new City Hall building as a customer service representative in the Public Works Department. We had just taken over services from the county and Republic Services, and Jeanette was the go-to person fielding phone calls for service requests. Throughout the past 15 years in Public Works, Jeanette has had an opportunity to work on a variety of projects that has led her to her current position today as a management technician. So I don't believe Jeanette is able to join us on the phone today, but Cyrus, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Very briefly, Jeanette is also one of those individuals who most of her work is behind the scenes, and she is the one who's been managing a significant part of our capital improvement plan related to funding, programming, and making sure that all the grant requirements and the financial reports are being done. I had the chance and opportunity to work with Jeanette very closely during my time in Public Works. She is very diligent, very hardworking, and I sincerely appreciate all the work that she has done for our team and for the community. Thank you, Jeanette.
So with that, I'd like to congratulate again Michael, Esther, Todd, and Jeanette for reaching their 15 years of service with the city. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
I do have one story with Michael. I've had a couple of interesting experiences with others, but Michael in particular, were you here for the renegade sheep incident? I don't know if he can speak to us. But in any case, the Sorrelborn Farms lost a sheep. It showed up in my neighborhood, in my neighbor's backyard, and their back door was kind of being attacked by the sheep. So what do? Of course, they call the councilman or the mayor, whatever it was at the time, from across the street. So I go over and try to wrangle the sheep, and thank goodness, animal control truck, I think it was Michael, I think he was the second one there, showed up to help me like wrangle the sheep. But otherwise, I was doing my city council duty, dealing with the wild animals in the neighborhood. Now, I did grow up in a farm environment, and I've dealt with sheep before, so I had some idea, but it was an impressive sheep. But Michael played a role there, so I'm happy about that.
What'd you do, lasso him?
Basically, yeah, we had to, yeah, she was too heavy to carry. That was attempted, tried to nudge along in the right direction, but yeah, it was an ornery sheep. But it fit in the back of the truck, and they took it back to Sorrelborn, and everything was good, so. So other duties as required.
That's hilarious. All right. So thank you for all our newest employees. All right. So I guess we'll move on to public comment. Citizens wishing to address the City Council for any matters not on the agenda may do so at this time via teleconference and Zoom. If you want to make a public comment, please use the raise hand at the bottom of the center of the screen. If you're participating by telephone, you want to make a public comment, please press *9 to raise your hand. Once participating, please wait for the clerk to call you. Speakers are encouraged to keep the comments to 3 minutes or less. state the name of the community and residents. Under the provision of the California State Code, the city council is prohibited from discussing or taking immediate action on any items unless it is demonstrated of the emergency nature or needs to take immediate action arose from the posting of the agenda. Stacy, do we have anyone for public comment?
The city clerk's office received 2 general public comments. One is from Maureen Nelson. The second is from Angel Ball, and we have forwarded those to the city council and the appropriate staff. As far as those who are wanting to speak under public comment in Zoom or telephone, I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Excellent. I guess we'll start with council reports. And so we will start with David Sander.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Connector had the first phase of our retreat last week. It's a good thing when we met last week that we decided to keep me there as I was halfway through that retreat process. You know, trying to figure out future funding for the Connector is the biggest challenge. And trying to get all the constituent agencies, all 5 of them, to play together and prioritize Connector projects or rethink how we fund the Connector in some way is the future discussion for that agency. Be going on for the next couple of months. I'm happy to keep you informed about that. I attended the first-tier suburbs meeting of the National League of Cities last week. I'm a past chair from, I don't know, probably a decade ago of that organization. They have new staff, which is very exciting. They have new support from the board, the executive committee, the executive team at the National League of Cities to deal with all of those issues that aging suburbia always throws out there. In the short term, people may not notice it. You know, in 10 or 20 years, you may not notice effects in your neighborhood about property declining in value or not being kept up. Or other activities you wish were not happening in your neighborhood that devalue it in some way, or add crime, or impact schools, or impact people's ability to have public recreation, or the infrastructure failing. But over time, all of these things have a huge impact. And First Tier Suburbs is focused on what happens in those old suburban areas and how can you keep them in a healthy state where crime is low, property values are good, they're attractive for families. The schools are sought after and accessible. How do you manage an old suburban network? Because all across the country, something like 40% of Americans live in older suburban environments, and unfortunately, no one has figured out this puzzle of how to interrupt that decline in suburban environments over time. So that's what this group is focused on. That's what I've been actively engaged with them on. That's what former Councilmember McGarvey was active on as well. It's through that organization that we formed Growing Strong Neighborhoods in Rancho Cordova from a lot of input and insight that we got from participation there. So I'm really happy to be back. I think they're going to be using me there as a speaker on a monthly basis. Not every month. So we have speakers every month. I'm going to fill in several of those slots. Looking forward to that participation and all the information we can glean from it that'll be useful for Rancho Cordova. I also participated in a homeless roundtable put on by Cal Cities last week. Very interesting discussion. I would say the hottest issue for discussion there was mental health and what Cal Cities could do in terms of lobbying the legislature for more authority for mental health commissions, either to state facilities or to court supervised care, something other than what we're doing. And this is all, of course, revolving around the chronically homeless, not the temporarily economically homeless or other categories that you may create, but the chronically homeless, people who've been homeless for 3 years, 5 years, more than a decade, those folks who are responsible for a lot of disorder in our communities, a lot of petty crime. And frankly, it's just a humanitarian crisis. They are suffering from a disease that inhibits their ability to make decisions about their future. And we have failed them in terms of providing the appropriate supports in California to deal with the crisis they're in. So shame on us, but I'm really happy to see that whole mental health discussion is moving more towards the center of where people are looking. It was not that long ago that it was sort of like a forbidden topic. You could talk about the homeless, but don't you dare say anything about mental health. And I'm glad that we're finally like coming full circle to talk about that again. That was a great discussion. At CICOG, we're laying out the year. I'm going to be vice chair of the Transportation Committee and chairing the Commercial Corridors effort, so more to hear there. I will be testifying, I guess it's in front of administration officials this Thursday, talking about the Vision Zero. I don't know how many of you have heard about Vision Zero. The concept is to imagine your community, have a vision for your community of zero traffic related deaths. So that's pedestrians, cyclists, people in cars, people in buses or other means of transport. Imagine what you'd have to do to your community to get those annual deaths from transportation to zero. There's a lot of things like complete streets, additional safety measures, protected bikeways, whatever the case may be. There's a lot that goes into it, but the new administration is really focused on what can we do funding-wise at the federal level to get to Vision Zero. And my job is going to be to give feedback from Cal Cities and the League of Cities about how we see that playing out in our jurisdiction. So I've asked Albert, for example, for feedback. Are there challenges with that Vision Zero with regard to federal funding, that Vision Zero goal with regard to federal funding, as we're doing it here on the ground? As you know, we've done a lot of safe routes to school, and there are some challenges in that program, and that's part of Vision Zero, getting kids safely to school. So more on that to come. Other than that, I've been involved in innumerable COVID calls and events. Just when you'd hope that, everything would be calming down a little bit, we've got a lot of vaccine anxiety and vaccine mythology and vaccine stress going on in the community, and I've been doing my best to inform our colleagues, other jurisdictions, as well as our residents. I think the Community Council is going to ask me to do a vaccine talk, the way I did general disease talk a couple of months ago, and I'm happy to do that. You'll of course be informed whenever that's going to air. It'll probably be some evening like the previous one. That's my report.
Excellent, thank you. Linda.
Thanks, Garrett. So, since this council last met, we had a regional transit meeting, which was really very uneventful. There was hardly anything that took place other than to appoint the chair and the vice chair and to reappoint members to the various boards and commissions that we all sit on as a result of that. And there are at least 2 new members of Regional Transit Board. So it did require some shuffling. Garrett, you and I attended the meeting of the Habitat Conservation Plan for South Sacramento. There is a lot of work being done right now, both at the board level as well as behind the scenes, to ensure that this HCP turns out to be the product that we all wanted in the long run. It was supposed to clear the way between the state and the federal processes to ensure that landowners, home builders could build their projects, and there have been some glitches. So staff is bringing a variety of very minor actions, they amount to tweaks to ensure that the HCP turns out to be valuable for all of us in the long run. We, part of the reason we went into this was the fact that the federal government wouldn't let Public Works widen the west half of Sunrise because they had decided that all the drainage ditches were waters of the U.S., and they didn't want us to do anything about it. So it's important to jurisdictions as well as to the private sector. And since I missed the workshop on the update on the Civic Center, I had a workshop with Cyrus and our consultants and was very pleased to see the progress that the consultants are making on the Civic Center, getting towards a design and deciding really winnowing down what used to be included in the Civic Center. We all had a very productive city retreat last week. The 2 afternoons were very well spent with a variety of information about city and current statistics, especially with the police department, with the budget, where the budget is going. The whole thing is intended to feed into the budget discussion, and it feels like we came away with a lot of information that will really be valuable there. And then Wednesday night, I start the first of 2 years as our representative to LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, which is one of those very mysterious boards and commissions that all counties in California are supposed to have. And it is the first time in a good 10 years, if not longer, that Rancho Cordova has actually had a seat on LAFCO since the rotation for our particular seat moves between all of the cities in the county. It really takes quite a while for us to come up again. So we'll try to make the most out of our 2 years on LAFCO. And the best way to describe LAFCO for people who are not familiar with it is that they were the commission tasked with reviewing all of the incorporations and dissolutions and all government organization within Sacramento County. And in order to get cityhood to the ballot, we had to get past LAFCO, which we did with flying colors. It took a while, but we got there. And so I'll be bringing you reports from whatever it is we're going to do at LAFCO. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Vice Mayor Terry.
Okay, the Air District met for the first time since October. I'm just looking at the agenda. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking at my other screen with the agenda up. There was a handful of updates from the APCO around various programs that the district was working on. I think I alluded to this, that Sue Frost, who was in line to be the chair this year, chose not to take the chairmanship position. So Eric Guerra from the city of Sacramento will continue as chair for the next 2 years, with the vice chair now being Patrick Kennedy. Mainly this is because Sue is going to be, or is president of the County Board of Supervisors this year. And with that added work, she chose not to assume the chairmanship. So that means I will stay as immediate past chair and still serve on the personnel and budget committees there. I think as far as the Air District, there was a presentation recognizing Rancho Cordova's work and working with the Air District in acquiring Purple Air monitors. This is something that, David, you brought up at a council meeting a few months ago, and the district recognized kind of our investment in working with them. One of the things that I think has been a regular comment from members of the public in our city has been that if you go to the Spare the Air website or to the app, which this time of the year you're supposed to check before you burn wood, in your fireplace or other things like that, you're supposed to be checking there to make sure that it's a clean air day and not a Spare the Air day. And even during the wildfires and others, a lot of people have gone to that website wanting to know how is the air in Rancho Cordova. And there's a monitoring station in, I'm trying to remember, just outside of the city, kind of surrounding us on 4 sides, but there isn't one that says Rancho Cordova. And so I think through this partnership and working with the city and the Air District, hopefully we can get some more people informed about whether or not, it's the right time to be going out for a jog or letting their kids go play, or whether or not they should be, checking before they burn. I think with that, it's still early in the year, so we haven't had any 2x2s with the school districts, but a lot of moving parts. I know I just responded to a myriad of scheduling requests for those and a handful of other things. So hopefully we'll have some more info soon on that. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Donald. I'll do my report.
Just a question, Donald. The the purple air sensors that we were trying to deploy to community members here, and maybe Cyrus has this answer. Have we done that? Because I don't know if we've actually accomplished it yet.
Yeah, we did. Actually, that's what they were talking about.
I can talk about that when I get to my report.
All right,
Yeah,
thank
perfect.
you.
All right, so I got elected the VP for the Library Council. So I'm gonna need to do some shuffling because they ran out of people because we had, I think 90% of the people on the library board have now changed, which I thought was crazy. So there's like 2 new faces. And Eric Guerra and Sue were contacting me being like, hey, did you happen to be one of the 3 same faces for the last 6 years? Would you mind helping out? So talk about that. Very exciting. They opened up another library. They really want to put a library in Rancho Cordova, actually in Rancho Cordova, not just next to it, but there's a lot of things they're trying to do to really reinvent the library to not just be a place for books, but also a place to do computers and almost like a center to bring people together that want to do projects. And so the library is reinventing itself, and so they're really looking forward to all stuff. The library actually started being warming centers for some of the areas. So that was an interesting place too for the Sacramento. I met with the Mayor's Tech Council. So I'd just like to say thank you to Women in Data. They're a big, large nonprofit group that helps women to find tech jobs. They're actually joining. So Sadie Lawrence, I want to thank her. We have Lewis from NVIDIA is actually now part of the Tech Council. So he's working on that. You guys all know Anil and then JP from another tech group. The main place for the Mayor's Tech Council is to bring jobs into Rancho Cordova. And so we have a lot of exciting things and a lot more people that hopefully will be sitting on it from like VSP and Intel, and all the major tech players in the region are all going to come together to see what we can spotlight Rancho Cordova, because people don't realize that Rancho Cordova, besides being one of the most amazing places to set up, has 6 to 8 data centers, has the largest and second largest employer of jobs. We have major companies moving into the city trying to do it silently, but I'm trying to find ways that they can increase jobs and then build a pipeline out of our junior college and high schools so that we can start to funnel jobs and people into the jobs. It's not enough just to have the jobs, but we got to have the people to step into those jobs. So they actually want to help with curriculum creation and whatever we can do. So I'm going to see how this kind of goes down. And I want to say thank you to Burning Barrel. Our Little League was broken into, and they stole all the catchers, gear, and everything else out of it. And Burning Barrel, along with RCC Little League, stepped up, did a fundraiser, and they were able to make enough money to replace most, if not all, the gear that was stolen by people that broke in. So that's just an example of our city is a little different from everyone else, where we'll step up and take care of our own, and the city doesn't even have to. Of course, I did the South Sac Conservancy, and then I have a really exciting race, but I'm not allowed to talk about it until there's a bunch more data. But some amazing business and amazing stuff is going to be coming into Rancho that's really going to spotlight the city, and I think it's going to help to fill up our hotels. And that's it for me. So I'm going to call on Cyrus, if you go ahead and do your report and tell us about those air monitors.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I talk about the purple air monitors, I wanted to thank the council for the time that you set aside for the council work sessions on the 25th and the 26th. This was a high-level visioning session, an opportunity for the city council to identify high-level priorities and the vision for the upcoming 2 budget years. I appreciate the feedback, and the direction and the guidance that we received from the city council is what we will use to incorporate in our upcoming budget, 2-year budget. So thank you for that direction. Related to the air monitors, the idea actually came from, I believe, one of our residents, and Council Member Mayor Sander at the time supported the idea greatly, and we put that in motion. And our staff, I want to acknowledge Laura Fickle, who worked with the Air District to identify the brand or the technology that would work best with their system that could be ultimately integrated into the overall air monitoring system that they have. Those monitors have been now purchased. We have about 15 of them, and we have been coordinating with Air District on the details, and they are ready for distribution, and that will happen in the next week or two. So these, as mentioned, these monitors will be additional monitors that we will tie into the overall regional system that will give us a better read on air quality in specific locations throughout the city. So these are low-cost monitors, and we think it's a great investment in helping the Air District to better monitor the quality of air in our region. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Cyrus,
Yes, ma'am.
Cyrus, describe physically what people will see going up.
It's
I mean, you think
it's a very small device. It's something that would probably be you will not notice it. You will not see it from the driving or on the street. It's a very small handheld device that will be installed in some areas of the backyard, and it will be through the wireless system will be tied to the regional air monitoring system. So there is an app
so
that
it's
will.
not
I'm sorry?
it's not attached to street lights or telephone poles or something.
No.
That's in people's backyards.
Yeah, this is a very small device that will be like probably, I don't know exact size of it, but you can think of it as a little bigger than a cell phone. It's not that huge.
Okay.
And it will
This is a little bit of citizen science.
Yeah.
Right? So you distribute this, people who are interested will hook it up to their Wi-Fi network, find power for it, I'm not sure exactly what's necessary there, and host it basically in their backyard and take care of it, and then be on the network, be part of the network. So
Well, and it's also, it's a public data, right? So like if you Google purple air, you can go into maps where people have these turned on in their yards and stuff, and it'll tell you at the neighborhood level what the air quality is for that house and that surrounding area. So again, what I've heard a lot from constituents, especially during smoke days, have been, why don't we have our own data here, right? There's one in Folsom, there's one in Sac, there's one in, they're all surrounding us, but there's not one physically in Rancho Cordova, and it's because for the science, they're spreading these out based on the county footprint of where they need to be, based on the funding. And we're talking, these are, hundreds of thousands of dollar monitoring systems. With Purple Air, residents can participate, and then as we spread them out within the city, if you go to purpleair.com or to the Air Quality Management District's website, you can get this localized information now, is what we're getting.
People volunteer to host one?
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah. So I think Cyrus and Public Works have figured out who wants one of these in their yard and how to deploy it.
Our communication.
You can buy one yourself too. Keep in mind.
Our communication
anybody
team.
can go get one of these and put. Yeah.
Our communication team reached out to our residents. We put out a flyer. So we're looking for our resident scientists that can really engage in this. It will just provide useful data to the scientists who do this for a living in the region, and it gives us better tools to evaluate and monitor air quality in our region.
Well, we've only got one scientist. What about the rest of everybody?
Well, and again, keep in mind, you can buy these yourself, just like a Ring video doorbell, where you can, just like Nextdoor, there's a Ring video doorbell community of reporting crimes and issues and other things like that. This is really the same thing. It's a device that is tied into the rest of the network, and there's thousands of people across the region that have them, that bought them themselves. We just, went a step further and I think secured some to give to residents.
And the best part of the story is a resident contacted me when I was mayor and said, hey, I'm really worried about air quality. And the Purple Air is what everybody talks about. And there's nothing in Rancho. I think there's one site in Rancho Cordova, maybe two. And what can you do about it? And for, I don't know, Cyrus, what they cost, 125?
It's about
something in that range.
200 something.
Oh,
A little-
200 and something. Well, there was a lot of demand for them, I should say, too. We couldn't immediately do it, but the cool thing is to have local government step up in this way to like, okay, we're going to knock down the barrier, but we're not going to do this for you, residents. We're going to let you go and do it. Ask for volunteers, people who are willing to step up, help their community, host one of the devices. This is like exactly how we should operate as a city in that kind of partnership.
And David, you're right. I'm looking at the Purple Air website right now, and site 27 and 28 in the county are in Rancho Cordova. That's it. So there are 2 sites currently up and running, with many more to come.
Mr. Mayor, we've had a fairly robust conversation about this topic. Is there a desire to bring something back for a future agenda?
Eventually, I think, but probably not for months.
Yeah, when they're deployed and out there, maybe we could do a 6-month review or something. That'd be neat to see what we've accomplished.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to consent calendar items. Consent calendar items may consist of matters deemed routine and non-controversial by staff, unless a member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual consideration. All items will be approved in one motion. I want to pull 13.2, and then I'm willing to take a motion for the rest.
I will move approval of 13.1 and 13.3.
Excellent.
Second.
So let's go ahead. Let's get a roll call. Give me a second.
The second was Councilmember Sander. Thank you. Councilmember Sander?
Yeah.
Aye.
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Gatewood?
Aye. So the only reason I pulled 13.2, which is the, or do I need to have you read this, Stacy?
That would be great. So the approval of council member appointments to regional boards, commissions, and committees.
So I got appointed to the vice chair of the library commission, and so I want to switch that out and put me there because they wanted me to be the vice chair since I'm one of the 3 members left.
Wait,
so
who's on it now?
You guys, I sit in that chair. Tom, Siri.
Oh, right.
So we already talked to her, so she's been informed. She was like, I thought you wanted me on this one. And I was like,
So she's going to be the alternate?
yeah, she'll be the alternate.
Great.
Okay. Cool. All right. So can we put that back up?
Okay. So move on to item 13.2.
With the caveat of the change of
Garrett for Siri.
For library, and I'll second.
Excellent. Second?
Didn't I second that?
Oh, you seconded it. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Roll call. Stacy?
Councilmember Sander?
Aye.
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Gatewood?
Aye. All right. So we'll move on to consent public hearing items consist of matters that are deemed routine and non-controversial staff, unless a member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual considerations. All members will be approved in one motion. And so, hold on, turn into my script. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. And ask the clerk, is there any public comments?
Number 14.1. The answer to that is no, and I don't see anyone in Zoom or by phone.
So I'm going to close public hearing and ask if there's a motion.
Move approval of 14.1.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Councilmember Sander?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Gatewood?
Aye. So we'll move to public hearing items. And can I have the clerk go ahead and announce the subject?
A resolution approving amendments to the Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2020 through 2024 Consolidated Plan and the 2020 Annual Action Plan to make awards for the CDBG CV Round 3 program applications.
Stefan, are you out there?
He will be in just a moment.
Okay, staff report, please.
All right, I think we have some slides coming up. But good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Stefan Heisler. I'm the Housing Manager for the City of Rancho Cordova. I'll be presenting the draft funding recommendations for our Community Development Block Grant COVID, which is what the CV stands for, Round 3. And I expect those slides will be up any second.
Give us just a moment, Stefan.
I didn't have any jokes prepared, so it's just going to have to be awkward silence.
Messed up, Stefan. Very odd. Off-putting. I like it.
Stefan, can you share with us where you placed the presentation?
I think it was in an email.
Nothing to match the technological issues that we had during the AB 1234 presentation, so no need to feel bad, Stefan.
I have them on my side too, if you want me to share my screen.
We're pulling it up, just a moment.
I tried to lip sync with videos that weren't playing aloud.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Adam. That was really rough for you to read the joke of a of a movie. That was hilarious.
I agree.
That was terrible for all of us. That was painful. I'm not gonna lie to you. Painful.
I think it hurt you. I think it hurt you even more
soul.
than it hurt me.
Just keep putting John Oliver clips in there. You can't go wrong.
All right, Stefan, go for it.
Okay, I think, there we go. Okay, I would probably pay money to hear Adam lip sync John Oliver or Leslie Knope, but maybe that's not for everybody.
I'll be happy to take you up on that.
Woo! Rough.
Okay. All right, for reals this time. I think I've got it. Yep. Okay. All right. So just a quick overview of the CDBG COVID purpose. So this comes out of the $5 billion that was allocated to the Community Development Block Grant Program in the CARES Act last year. So there were 3 phases of Community Development Block Grant awards to different jurisdictions. Rancho Cordova received $373,000 and change in the first phase. There was no allocation in the second phase. All of the second phase went to states. So state of California did an allocation of the second phase to non-entitlement jurisdictions. Rancho Cordova is an entitlement jurisdiction. But we did get an allocation for the third and final phase, which was $487,938. And that is the subject of our discussion tonight. So in addition to the typical CDBG objectives, the COVID program adds this additional objective, which is the preparation, prevention, and response to COVID-19 crisis. The funding limits are similar, but more relaxed than the regular CDBG program. So we still have up to 20% program administration. The 15% cap on public services has been waived for the COVID program, and there is no limit similarly on capital programs. So this evening's discussion requires 2 amendments, basically to just make the awards for the round 3 or the phase 3 applications, but we will be amending our 5-year consolidated plan and our 2020 annual action plan to add the new program's additional budget and goals. So quickly going over the timeline for the rounds 1 and 3. On April 6th, we adopted the formal consolidated plan and the 2020 annual action plan. On June 1st, we made our first round of amendments for CDBG CV round 1. And then in December, and the CV round 1 programs were all meant to be performing their activities just during the calendar year of 2020. So you'll see there, December 31st, we have most of our projects completed, about 90% complete. We do have one project that is bleeding over into this year, and which we've already extended. But most of those programs are now complete. So on December 14, we issued our notice of funding availability for round 3. We held a workshop virtually on December 18. Applications were due on January 15. We printed a public notice on January 22 for a reduced 5-day public comment period, which was allowed because of the COVID crisis. And then here we are this evening, February 1st, with the public hearing to consider the CDBG CV Round 3 awards and the corresponding amendments. So really quickly, just a review of the Round 1 applications and approvals. We funded 5 programs: the Folsom Cordova Community Partnership, the Boys and Girls Club, Sacramento Self-Help Housing with 2 different programs, Rebuilding Together Sacramento, and of course, Planning and Administration. There was a small amount of unallocated funding with Phase 1, which we have allocated, but there will be some rollover from this Round 1 that is not included here in Round 3, and so we'll be coming back to you probably later this year with whatever funds rolled over that weren't spent in Round 1. And just to give you an idea of what that is, it's probably about $75,000 to $80,000. So here this evening, our consideration of Round 3, we have received 5 applications, very similar to Round 1 applications, with a couple differences. So the first one is the Folsom Cordova Community Partnership, which is actually a rent and utility assistance program. They're able to provide up to 3 months of rent and utility assistance. The second one is Boys and Girls Club. It is a little bit different. It's not a club on the go. This is really just providing clothes and shoes for kids in Rancho Cordova. The third one is the Sacramento Self-Help Housing Emergency Housing Services. You'll see that this is the only program recommended for less funding than was requested. The reason for this is they were awarded a Round 1 award, so they were providing services in 2020. However, there was a greatly lower amount that they were able to spend in 2020 versus what they received. So our recommendation here in Round 3 is actually double what they were able to spend in 2020, but it is less than what they requested. The fourth application was from Rebuilding Together Sacramento. So they're similar, additional safe and healthy home repairs and support. These are things like roof repairs and wheelchair ramp lifts, etc. And the last one is the Meals on Wheels program, which is a new one from Round 1, excuse me. But this is, oh, I'm sorry, there's a typo there. So Meals on Wheels is meant to be a transition program from our Great Plates Delivered program. We've increased that number here from what they requested based on the council direction at the last council meeting to greatly increase the Great Plates program. So we expect there will be additional need to have a bigger ramp down program. We don't know exactly, again, when this would start this year, but we do anticipate it will be in calendar year 2021. We do have flexibility. If it doesn't, we can extend these programs into 2022 if need be. I think the deadline to spend the funds is at the end of 2022. So if it doesn't get spent this year, we do have the option to extend it. And we are looking at a reduced planning administration budget from this round of 11% of the total funding. And there is no part of this that is not allocated for funding. That's the end of this presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the staff or public.
All right, I'd like to open the public hearing. Any speaker cards?
We have one public comment on this item from Donald Childs. That information was provided to the city council and staff and has been posted on the city's website. I don't see any additional public comment in Zoom or telephone for this item.
I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Councilmember Sander?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Gatewood?
Aye. All right, we're going to move on to regular calendar items. Subject is going to be the mobile home discussion regarding the scope of the state and local authority to enact regulations. We've all been concerned about this. This is the first one on the regular calendar items. So at this point, I'm going to ask my city attorney office for a staff report.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council and community. This is an item that the city council asked us to bring back to you and to talk with you about the scope of city authority and the scope of state preemption as it relates to mobile home parks, and to help frame the legal landscape for potential council action on a few topics of interest that you've expressed related to mobile homes. Our office really appreciates the input that we've had from members of the community on this topic. Very useful and productive discussions that have led up to the staff report, and we certainly welcome any direction that the council would have to us and to the planning department and to other city departments, including code, that might be involved in any direction that you might give based upon this evening's discussion or subsequent discussions. So with that, mobile homes are regulated by 3 bodies of law. I would thank my colleague, Trevor Taniguchi, who worked very closely with me, and also the planning department was involved in this body of work. Mobile home parks are regulated by 3 bodies of law that we've looked at. The mobile home residency law regulates mobile home rental agreements and the types of allowable charges and evictions. The Manufactured Housing Act regulates the construction and alteration of mobile homes, and the Mobile Home Parks Act regulates the construction and the operation of mobile home parks. We're going to talk about a few different issues as it relates to those bodies of law. Mobile homes and mobile home parks, collectively referred to in this discussion as mobile homes, are regulated by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. And HCD is responsible for the enforcement of the Mobile Home Parks Act. However, a city and county may petition HCD to assume the responsibility for the enforcement of the act. And after approval and assumption of these responsibilities, the city or county would then be responsible for all the enforcement and oversight under the act. Currently, the city doesn't have the mentioned assignment and jurisdiction from HCD, and HCD retains all of its authority and jurisdiction to regulate mobile homes in Rancho Cordova. And the city's the code enforcement officers only issue citations for municipal code violations against the mobile home park owners and not against individual tenants or residents of mobile home parks. Code enforcement attempts, where possible, to provide assistance to resolve mobile home tenant issues, but it doesn't have the legal authority to directly issue citations to individual tenants or residents in mobile home parks. It would be a significant amount of new work for the city to assume the responsibility for enforcing state mobile home and mobile home park statutes and regulations. We've had initial conversations with the code enforcement department and done research into this, and our initial estimates are that it would likely require 1 to 2 full-time staff equivalents, as well as additional training and resources that would be, again, primarily provided to code. There would be some additional resources and training or a reallocation of resources from the city attorney's office for legal support as well, because it's an area that we don't currently have any direct involvement in. A second topic that the council raised was expanding the current smoking prohibitions on multifamily properties to include mobile home parks and mobile homes within mobile home parks. And the council, of course, adopted an ordinance last year that prohibited smoking within multifamily homes. And because of the uncertainties about the city's authority, and omitted from that and excluded from that prohibition mobile homes. Based upon the research that we've done, we have identified that an attempt to regulate here would be somewhat rare and potentially risky. It remains unclear whether the city possesses the legal right to prohibit smoking in mobile homes in the city without assuming the broader enforcement responsibilities from HCD that we discussed above. If the city chose to assume those broad enforcement authorities and become the enforcer under the state law, that it could potentially enact its own smoking regulations pertaining to mobile home parks and mobile homes. But it's unclear whether or not those would withstand legal challenge. And part of that unclarity is just because, again, we've identified that those types of prohibitions are very rare, and even when we found them, they are quite limited. We found only 2 cities that prohibit smoking within mobile homes, and both have quite limited reach and applicability in different ways. One in terms of the very, very strict requirements for evidence that appear to be almost so high that it would be very rare, if almost impossible, to actually use it as an enforcement tool. State law does allow landlords the ability to restrict or prohibit smoking within their dwelling units, but to our knowledge, there is not a specific or clear statutory authority for the city to enact and enforce a citywide prohibition in mobile homes. But it is something that we could look at, and I think the risk tolerance would ultimately depend upon the council's direction and interest. Rent stabilization for mobile home parks was another topic that you asked us to provide foundation for your future discussions on. And city staff, again, here on this topic in particular, appreciates the collaboration and support and resources that we've received from members of the community on this topic, and look forward to continued collaboration if there's any direction to proceed forward. The mobile home residency law here provides procedures for providing notice of rent increases and regulates the overall content of rental agreements for mobile home parks, as well as the particulars for how you terminate tenancies and so forth. It does not specifically restrict the amount of rent that mobile home park owners can charge their residents, and it does provide that for long-term leases that were entered into after January 1st, 2020, would be subject to local mobile home rent stabilization ordinances. So going forward, the city would have the authority to impose a rent stabilization ordinance. Courts have looked at rent stabilization ordinances and concluded that so long as the ordinance is reasonably calculated to eliminate excessive rents and also to provide landlords with a just and reasonable return on their investments, that they are enforceable. And a typical rent stabilization ordinance has a couple components. First is a process to allow for regular consumer price index inflation-based increases, as well as a process that allows the landowner to provide evidence of and to petition for a different increase above the standard adjustment. And that increase above the standard adjustment is one that is subject to a public hearing and an open advocacy process that would be accessible to members of the community as well as to the landlord. The development and implementation of rent stabilization programs is something that in some cases can be quite complex and can cause significant amounts of energy and time to be expended, and is something, again, also that staff would need to spend time learning about how to do and training themselves on as well. We do not have a particular budget or potential scope for that endeavor. Should the council ask us to look further into it, we'd be happy to help you focus in on exactly what the potential budget and cost of rent stabilization might be, as well as to give you more detailed information about it. We do identify in the end of the staff report also just a few other powers that are granted to cities with respect to mobile homes. Chief among them, of course, is the ability to establish zones and locations where mobile home parks are allowed and permitted, and to do other types of things under your zoning code authority. So we hope that that covers the council's major questions and interests, and we look forward to helping you explore this issue if you choose to do so in the future. Again, I didn't mention code in the list of departments that I specifically thank for their collaboration on this topic. There have been a number of staff members there as well, and in other departments that have been helpful to us in getting this far. Appreciate your time and consideration this evening.
I have a question for staff.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, so we're blessed with a very active group of people at Mobile Country Club, but has staff done any research about what may or may not be happening in terms of flagrant rent increases at the other parks in Rancho Cordova? We actually, we have at least 6, I'm thinking, 6 other parks in Rancho. Have we done any research in those others? Anybody?
I don't know if that was directed at planning or at me, or perhaps
Anybody?
at Micah. The city attorney's office has not.
Councilmember Budge, I don't believe that survey has been done.
So can I, actually, do we want to take public comment first, or do you just want questions now?
Well, if we have questions for staff, it's really important that council has an opportunity to get those questions out first.
Yeah, so let me do that, because I want to kind of frame a couple of things that I heard, Adam, and make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. Did you say that we can assume HCD's role when it comes to code enforcement, that we could choose to take that on, or would we need to apply and ask for permission from HCD? I don't know if I understood how you explained that. Adam, you're on mute.
Excuse me.
Okay.
You would petition HCD. It's not just your decision solely.
It's within their discretion to deny us?
It's within your discretion. Yeah, believe it is within their discretion to deny you. I don't have the precise findings that they would need to make in order to do so.
Okay, I'd be really interested to see other examples of other jurisdictions doing that and what the process was of being approved and being denied, and what kind of process that is and what they relied on to decide a denial or an approval. I'd also be very interested in knowing how that worked out for the ones that assumed that role. I don't know of anyone that's done it. I know that we've had residents that have claimed and given me examples, but I haven't been able to independently research that myself. But I'd be really interested in understanding what the process would be for that, what kind of due process we would have if we chose to go down that route. On the rent control side of it, I know there are communities that have done it. I'd be really interested in understanding, and whether this is working with the advocacy groups or the owners association, of not only like the mobile home owners association and the mobile home park owners associations, that I'm sure are all out there representing different people, or these different entities, examples of who did this and how it worked out. My trepidation when it comes to rent control is always that rent control inevitably justifies a lack of deferred maintenance on rental properties. And one of the biggest struggles that we have as a community, while rents are rising across the region, and they're rising here faster than most places in California, we have a massive problem with deferred maintenance on rental properties. And I think, if I'm channeling David Sander here, one of our biggest things that we do in Growing Strong Neighborhoods is try to hold landlords' feet to the fire when it comes to maintaining their rental properties. And so when you restrict the income that they can get, they start to justify why they're not fixing things. So I have a lot of trepidation there, but I really want to understand, and I don't know this answer, what is it that a mobile home park owner really provides as far as maintenance? If we restricted their income, what would they not do? Is that landscaping? Is that not repaving the driveway? Would they not maintain a clubhouse? How many of the 9 that we have in town have clubhouses and have kind of community amenities that may not be well maintained if they didn't get additional revenue? So I'd really want to understand a lot of those variables. It's helpful in understanding that we potentially could do it, because that's been the question for, I want to say, 2 years for me, is what authority do we have as a council to affect these issues? When I look at this population, it's generally older residents on fixed incomes suffering from probably a host of disabilities in one way or another. And so their ability to just continue to weather rent increases when, most of them are tied to a COLA maybe at best, as far as their income, I see a lot of reasons to entertain this idea. But I'd really want to understand the consequences of this and where they've done it in California and how it's worked out. As somebody who grew up in the South Bay, I'm fairly certain Santa Cruz was one of the first places that implemented a rent control, I believe. They also were the first ones to implement co-op ownership, that I believe was in assistance with the local government to finance it. So, I just want to understand, and I appreciate this presentation, because I want to understand all of the tools we have in place, but also where those tools have been exercised, how did it go, before I would be prepared to go down any one path.
David, do you have anything before I do public comment?
I think Donald got it pretty much exactly right. I don't know if I'd correct any of that. It's interesting to know that it can be done. It's a little shocking to realize what the overhead on that could be. Multiple staff members devoted to this full time, basically, trying to deal with the valuations and the charges and keep up with all the paperwork. It also doesn't appear to be an automatic thing. We'd actually have to petition for and get state approval to carry out this task. So, you know, I sure wish there was a simpler way here. I wish that state law would accommodate a fix to this particular problem, because this is one of those situations where it feels like trying to do it local is actually distracting and inefficient. And I wish there was a more comprehensive answer for the owners in these parks. These folks who I think, from all good intentions, feel like they're getting an affordable style of housing, and then kind of get trapped in this situation where they can't control the rent rates and they can't move their residents. Although it's called mobile, it's really not mobile. So they're stuck, basically. I know I've seen, this is purely anecdotal, but I've seen values seemingly fall or at least get awfully low in some of our mobile home parks where people are trying to sell homes. You know, you can see them listed for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And I think that discount is probably trying to accommodate that uncertainty in what that rent's going to be, because you just don't know year to year how much it can go up. There's no control over it. So I really appreciate the additional information. I'm looking forward to some public comment here, I hope. And frankly, if we don't get some, we should probably go seek some, because we've got a lot of mobile homes in our community, and this is a serious issue for us. It just still remains the serious question of what can we do about it.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment, Stacey?
We did.
Eric, can I just dovetail on one thing that David just said that I would want to make a suggestion to staff? This seems like something that I know we've got COVID and everything else going on, but David, what you just said about going out and trying to find, and Linda even asked the same question, has anybody, you know, contacted the other owners in the other parks? This is something that screams out for Lori Ann's team to be working on, as far as engaging these residents to understand kind of what their struggles are, whether, you know, we've gone to Lincoln Village because of crime issues, and West Loma and a handful of other places to do it. This just seems, and again, I know we have a technology barrier, we have a health crisis barrier, but if there was a way to use our asset-based community development strategies here to try to find resident leaders beyond the ones that we've heard from, to speak up about kind of what they want to see happen in these communities, I think that would be fantastic. So just a suggestion there, Cyrus, Micah.
Excellent. All right, Stacey, go ahead. Any public comment?
The city did receive a written public comment via email by Robert Van Cleef. That was what we received via email. I also see a couple of hands raised in Zoom. The first speaker will be Robert Van Cleef. Following Robert will be Jill Fellows. And Robert, I'm unmuting you, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Well, thank you very much for this conversation. As I say in my email, I thought the report was very well done, and I'm pleased with it. The two things I recommended in the email was, one, to reach out to the HCD and the county records and all that, and find out really how many you have here. Because according to HCD, you only have 3, and one of those is the county, in the county lands. And there's another 6 down there that are up near, I can't ever say the name of that road. But anyway, down in the Folsom area near the base, that there's another 6 down there that are inside the city boundaries and probably should be rated as listed here. But HCD says they're in the county. I mean, in the city of Sacramento. I think they go by zip code, and they make a cost of towing to figure out where it goes. But also, I also agree with the idea of reaching out and trying to find out the status there. You've got 1,300 households in Rancho Cordova over that may be at risk of almost everyone losing their houses because of these predatory investors who come in and just start raising the rents without any concern for the people who actually live in the communities. So I thank you for this time, and I thank you for what you're doing. Bye. All
right. At this point,
The second
I think
speaker,
it's just
second speaker is Jill
Oh.
Fellow.
Oh, Jill.
Jill,
Hello?
you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank each of you for your genuine interest in our predicament, and I'm just thrilled at what you're saying because you're right on target. Everything that has been said is on target. I hope this can be pursued, and I hope we can figure a way to make it affordable for the city. This is so important. And to not shut this down anytime soon, and to give more time to it now that we've received your report and where you stand on this issue. I think we can tell you more, and maybe I can get together with Bob more often, and we can put our heads together too. Thank you very much.
So, Garrett, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Linda.
So, yeah, I read in Bob's email the list of the parks that supposedly HCD thinks are in the city of Sacramento. And of course, we know that people who really don't know where they are assume that everything that's got in Rancho Cordova that has a Sacramento 95827 address is not in Rancho Cordova. And as David can tell you very quickly, that's not accurate. So in terms of our investigation of all the ins and outs of this, it would seem to me that one of the first things that we need to do is go to HCD and educate them on what Rancho Cordova expects out of its owners in terms of keeping up the property, you know, set their misguided impressions correct that these things are part of Rancho Cordova, and we expect them to adhere to development standards like we would any other residential project, whether or an apartment complex. And I realize that that we have no ability to tell HCD what to do, but we can certainly suggest to them. Previous directors at HCD were very friendly to Rancho Cordova, and we would hope that there could be some level of cooperation at this point. So I would suggest that HCD is one of our first stops if we're going to direct staff to go forward and gather more information.
You know, Darren, I looked up what they were talking about because that really surprised me when I heard the Sacramento County thing. I'm not sure we can draw that conclusion here. Looking at their website, we all know zip codes 95826 and 95827 have a portion in the county and a portion in the city of Rancho Cordova. And so when I look at the website, it's not saying it's in the county. It's saying Sacramento County, just like anything else would say Sacramento County. It's just that zip code is still Sacramento. So I don't know if they're that out of touch.
Bottom line, they need to know, and we need to know what they think they know.
Yeah. But I mean, they've got maps on here. I would also tell you that like they don't have contact info for who's really overseeing these things at HCD and some other things too on this website. So it's not the best, but I mean, they're listed here, but I think the bigger problem right now in looking at their website, it's the zip codes are still Sacramento, and it's just the mailing zip code. I'm pretty sure they're aware of where they are. But I would put that on the list that yeah, Micah, your team or somebody should be going over to let them know we're starting to research what we can do here. But again, I'm really interested in seeing how this worked out, and if for the communities that decided to do this, if somebody pulled the trigger, like, did they clean up their parks? Did resident, engagement improve? Did home ownership improve? David, to your point, did home values improve? I don't know. I think this is that one area where probably you couldn't sell a park for as much if you had rent control, but every one of those houses could go up in value, right? The homes could actually go up in value if done right. But I'd really like to see. I don't want to be the guinea pig here, I guess, in doing this, and I'm guessing there's some folks out there that have tried this and I'm guessing some of them it worked and some of them it didn't. And so, but this is a really great first step. But I'd like to hear about this again in the next few months. Hopefully, we could get some more data.
So if I can just step in, Mr. Mayor and Council, just real quick, it'd be really good if Council is interested to continue this conversation to get more information, to be real specific about that information that you're looking for, as it requires some work and some effort to bring some of that research and things back and some time to do that. We'd really want to hit that mark for Council as far as what those items are. And I think we heard a couple from Councilmember Terry as far as what other jurisdictions have done as far as the code enforcement taking over that responsibility, and then some of the rent control stabilization items. So if there are other things that you're really interested to know or hear about, please let us know now so that we can bring back a full package.
That's why I said what I did, Micah. Yeah. We need to know if there are if the other parks, and apparently there are 9 in Rancho Cordova, if the other parks are experiencing the same issues. We know that at least 2 of them are in a very disintegrated state. One close to Folsom and Matherfield Road, and one off to the west of Routier. But also along Horn Road, there's at least one that are managed by people who are owned and managed by people who belong to the BIA and very much are local residents, so they may not be having the same issues, and we need to know that information. And then again, I'm quite certain we can't go forward in this discussion without sitting down with HCD and finding out what they think they know, and having a discussion about our concerns.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
I think the direction for us to talk with HCD before the council decides whether or not it's necessary to file that petition or not is probably a great recommendation and a good prerequisite step. They might be more receptive to us if they also heard that your efforts were being supported by our assemblyman or senator, as they are a state department. Would you like to give us direction to staff or the city manager's office to possibly update as you gather information, to possibly involve your state electeds in the conversation?
Adam, that's a wonderful idea. One hopes that HCD is more responsive to our Assembly Member Cooley's office than General Services has been, since they've been ignoring his request for almost 3 years now to replant all the trees that they ripped out on White Rock Road and left a barren hillside. So yes, by all means, I'm sure we should talk with Ken's office, but hopefully HCD is a little more intelligent about this.
Well, and I think, if there's some sort of governing body that we would have to get permission from, I think letting them know that we're evaluating our options here, I think at a minimum, you know, regardless of which direction we go down, the fact that they should, it's kind of the same idea, right? That, I'm sure the county tried some things right before cityhood to claim that they were going to continue to service the city, better than a new city would do, right? It's kind of the same idea. If we're about to pull this trigger, maybe HCD will start doing a few more inspections and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, sure, reaching out to them, I think, makes a lot of sense. And based off of their website, I'm counting 10 parks that I found between 95827 and 95670. Although they got one that's 95826 and it says it's in Fair Oaks. I didn't know the zip code jumped the river, so don't exactly know what that is. But if I'm looking at this, there were 7 in that one zip code and 3 in 95670. So, and I've heard anywhere from 7 to 10 now, or 9 as counts. So it'd also be good to get an idea of exactly what that number is and how many units we're talking about, average rents, all that kind of stuff would be really important information for me. But what the average rent increases were, if that's public data in some way or data that we can glean from residents that are there, I think that would all be helpful. I mean, if we're talking an average of 2% a year, that's one thing. If we're talking an average of 10 or 12, that's another thing. You know, and like I think I kind of started off with this, you know, the Bay Area, DC, LA, or not LA, New York, they're all seeing double-digit rent decreases due to the pandemic. And outlying communities like ours are the ones that are seeing record increases every year when it comes to multifamily housing and single-family rentals as well. So we're seeing this across the board everywhere. So it'll be really helpful. We'll need to understand kind of what in this micro market of this housing type we're really seeing. And I know, you know, Bob, you've been really helpful in providing us all with kind of what's going on, I think, within your park, but, you know, with so many others that really aren't comparable in some ways, we should really get a handle on kind of what's happening at those parks as well.
And just to let you know, we do have 9 mobile home parks, so we do have a confirmed number of parks that we don't know what number of units. It is 9.
Their website's got 10. Maybe one of those is jumped to the county.
So I think, you know, part of it I hear some interest in, you know, the rent stabilization or rent interest and figuring out some information about rent, but I think there's also a different question around maintenance and standards. So you might have good maintenance and standards, but maybe the rental increases. So they may not be equal as far as the issues that some of these parks may have, but an interest in both the rent side and a separate interest in the maintenance side as well for those discussions.
Great. All right, excellent.
And Mr. Mayor, I mean, could I ask for the council to explore, and Micah, perhaps we might benefit from, are you interested more in the affordability issue or in the code enforcement issue?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, I think probably both. You know, they're tied for one reason. A few years ago, we had programs with Kiwanis Club and maybe the Rotarians as well. I'm not sure, and we were trying to assist them in doing maintenance.
It's us, no?
Yeah, it's us, every 90 minutes.
The same issue, 90 minutes.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by... You have joined the meeting as an attendee and will be muted throughout the meeting.
You know, we tried to respond as best we could to some of the most serious situations, but it was more than we could deal with. And I don't have
the
any...
The host would like you to unmute your microphone.
Those situations are better
unmuted
now than they were then. I have no evidence to support that. So we've got these problems out there. The question is, can we help our residents do anything about it? So I'm you know, interested in exploring both of these options. I got to tell you, I don't like messing in private markets. But in this case, the private market is so skewed by sort of the governmental system that's set up around it that there's almost no option, you know, other than to necessarily mess in the market if that's what this comes down to.
David, my last job, I managed probably 5 of those contracts for cities where we handled emergency repairs and home funds. 80% of the homes that we worked on were mobile homes. Easily 80%, I would say. Another fun fact, in case anyone's wondering, the HCD office that handles mobile homes is across the street from the Franchise Tax Board off of Mayhew. It's like down this street. It's like 1,000 feet outside of the city.
Really?
Yep, it's over there off of Tech Center.
They're local. That's great.
Yeah, they're like right across from Capital Christian and everything. Yeah, they're right.
That means their staff is local too, so that.
Yeah, but that office that does it is on Tech Center.
So Council, if I may, to facilitate our future discussions, could we recap for additional information or research that the council is interested? Mike or Adam, can you list those so we know that what specific information we need to be researching?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
And I'd be happy to supplement, sure.
So I had, first was just having conversations with HCD and making sure our information and direction for HCD is good as far as their current operation and that relationship. Checking that box with them as far as the ability for cities to actually move through this process from a code and kind of that as a prerequisite for the conversation. Getting information from other communities who've pursued this type of work and presenting that information as far as what they've done, both on the taking over a code enforcement role or maintenance role, and also on the rent stabilization or rent control issue. And then I think the other was focusing the conversation around both the maintenance side and getting information on it from the mobile homes that are here, and then also the rent if we're able to get that from them. So those are the areas that I had.
And the critical part is those jurisdictions that have been successful here or unsuccessful, and why? Because it's I don't know. This doesn't feel like the sort of territory where you want to be the first to try something unless you're really, really sure, and the risks seem significant. For example, is there a jurisdiction out there that charges a fee to the mobile homeowners to pay for the additional staff that are necessary to manage these programs for them? Because this isn't something we do for apartments or single-family homes or single-family home rentals. This would be something special we would be asking the taxpayer to basically subsidize on behalf of a subset of our residents. So is there a way that those residents can pay for that themselves? And with the rent increases being what they are, it might not be, it might be a really good deal compared to the alternative.
Two other comments that I had in my notes beyond what Micah said were, one council member talked about, is there any way of figuring out what the average rent increases in the other parks have been recently, and getting more data from other parks. And one council member also said that this screams out for Lori Ann's team to be working on broader community outreach. Micah, any comments or specifics about the manner in which we might do community outreach or data gathering?
Yeah, I think we just have to figure out the right team or the right approach to get the information, whether it's on the maintenance or the other piece. And I think the community engagement piece is really about just engaging that in the broader city efforts as well. So I think we can talk about how to get there. But nothing else to add.
Let me just glance one more time. Yeah, just examples of how other cities have done it. And also, there was a request for on what basis could HCD deny the petition.
I think it would be, what could they deny and how have they wielded that power? It'd be real interested to hear that, 9 out of 10 times they deny it and this is why. And maybe it's because we as a city don't have as much experience in this. We're not big enough. Our budget isn't large enough. I don't know. Are there things that like clearly we're going to get disqualified the second we turn it in? I'd want to understand that, if that makes sense. If there are just typical reasons.
Yeah,
that, like we never approve anyone with a population under 500,000. So if
right,
you're not,
that's a very good comment.
Yeah, if there's something that was just like you're going to get laughed out of the room, we need to know that now or before we start that.
All right, excellent. Staff, you guys got enough info?
Mayor Gatewood, we have one additional hand that has been raised for this item. Are you okay with us calling on her?
Go ahead.
Joanne French. Joanne, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just have some.
Thank you for your patience.
I have some random comments. No problem. I really appreciate. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the diligence and seriousness with which you've responded to our issue. I live in Mobile Country Club. I'm just going to throw out some random stuff. Typically, a mobile home is not expected to raise in value. It's expected to decrease in value. I say typically, like a car, because it's personal property, not real property. So I just want to throw that out there. My rent, I moved in April of 2014, so I'll be in 7 years this coming April, has gone up 51.4%. I consider this very affordable housing because I'm able to afford it. The problem is most people who live here, a lot of the people who live here and in other parks are severely low income. I mean, emphasis on severely low income. Our rent now, I just wrote my check for rent and it was $1,078. That includes all my utilities and everything. That exceeds the income for many of the residents who live here because they're on Social Security. You can't fix that. You can't fix that people ended up in the most vulnerable years living on unlivable wages, unlivable income. That's too complex and too big. I also wanted to throw out that I believe there's a legislative committee. The state legislature has a committee that oversees mobile homes, and maybe, I'd be willing to help find out who that is. Bob Van Cleef would know, because I've been on GSMOL, the Golden State Mobile Home Owners League. I've been on their conference calls. I would recommend that their attorney would be a good resource for you and some of these questions or endeavors that you're looking into, and maybe this committee with the state legislature.
For the GSMOL, Bob, I don't know if this is something you can answer. Is Brian Augusta still the attorney and lobbyist for that group with housing advocates?
That name sounds familiar. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he used to be. He's local too. Represents a handful of other affordable housing groups and stuff. He used to represent them. So Mike, I don't know if I can get you his contact info, but he may be a good one to talk to as far as who are the players when it comes to that. But I'm trying to remember, Bob, are you or one of your residents is on that board, right? Somebody that lives there.
Bob Van Cleef is on that board.
He is. Okay. Then we can talk to Bob about that offline. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there was a lady that lived in there that was on their board 10 years ago. But since then, I've kind of lost track. But I'm pretty sure Brian is the one that represents them at the state level, and he may be a good one to engage in some of these conversations.
Thank you, Joanne. Those are great comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why a lot of these mobile home parks are in such horrible disrepair is these people don't have money for food, let alone paint to paint their house.
Yeah.
All right.
Council, if I may, just one final comment that might help both council and the community is, as I listen to this list, Micah, please feel free to chime in here as well. I think to do true justice to both the community outreach, the information gathering, the potential lobbying to and relationship building with HCD, the serious comparative political analysis and economic analysis that you've asked for. We are almost certainly talking months, not weeks, and it might make sense to just set the shared expectation that we would be back to you in Q3 rather than in the next few weeks or even a couple of months. I think we could certainly provide both members of the community and council some indications that we're making progress on, and you would see examples of good work being done. But before we would have answers to all of these sorts of things, Micah, does that sound about right, given other matters that I know are on the to-do lists of key members of the team that would be working on this?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I think there is other things on the menu at the moment, and I think that Q3 probably sounds about right to be able to bring something back by.
My only reaction to that, I would just say that, and maybe this is a mayor vice mayor conversation to have with the city manager. When you say Q3, when we're talking January, when we normally go dark in July, you're talking August, not like beginning of July. So we're talking 7 months from now. So to me, that seems a little long, but I'd be okay with that maybe being a topic for the mayor, vice mayor, and city manager to see if we can talk through priorities as far as tackling policies. I get that we just ask you for a lot of things, and I get that, and I'd rather have good information than partial and get that sooner than to get all of it later. But still, what I just heard, well, it would be 6 months from now, would be August, because we're in February.
I think, Cyrus, for the council to understand that this is a complex and significant task, not a simple one, and I think to do it well, we don't want to ignore the complexity.
I hear you.
Anything else to share, Cyrus or Micah?
No, thank you.
All right, excellent. We're going to go ahead and move on. All right, next one. Discussion and potential design regarding homeowners association conditions and restrictions. So we're going to, at this point, and introduce Darcy from our staff for our staff report. Darcy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Just one moment before the presentation gets up. Okay, good evening. Darcy Gillard with the Planning Department. This evening's discussion will be a continuation of a previous discussion on homeowners associations and our CC&R efforts that we currently undergo here in the city. Let's try to switch this slide here. So our goal tonight is just to recap what we currently do as a city, take a look at some other options that the council asked staff to just kind of explore. And then we're not looking for any formal action. It's just a discussion item. And if there is some direction, then council can provide that to staff. So what do we currently do? So currently, developments with a common area, they do form a traditional homeowners association under state law. So this is commonly referred to as a common interest development HOA. So when we're talking about common areas, we're talking about landscaped areas. Maybe if it's a private gated community, they have amenities behind the gate that need to be maintained. And so their HOA is formed in order to collect the dues in order to maintain those types of facilities. Additionally, what the city has done is we have come up with recordable, enforceable covenants, conditions, and restrictions of CC&Rs. The city is named as a third-party beneficiary with rights and without obligation to enforce. What we have seen as of lately is that this effort is working. So we do have some homeowners associations where issues have come about and the developers have contacted the city, and so we've been working with the developers and the residents to get the issues that have been occurring in place and resolve those particular issues. So we're talking about stuff such as some private property maintenance issues. So what we have seen is that this enforceable CC&R effort is working within the city, so we're happy to report that. The next one to bring up, which is one we have talked about before, is a non-CID HOA. So these are not required by the state, and they are formed when there isn't any common area. So this is, it's like an HOA, but there wouldn't be any common area in there. It's potentially easier for a non-HOA to enforce the CC&Rs versus individual homeowners, but there are several disadvantages to this. They are not subject to state law. They sometimes are not properly managed, and in order to carry out their obligations and collect fees, sometimes that requires a litigation process. Additionally, while it might be a shorter process, the state law just isn't in place in order to effectively operate these types of HOAs. The council did receive a couple letters today that I know Stacy would probably read into the record, but I just wanted to briefly touch on those. So the BIA reached out to us as well as the Sacramento Association of Realtors. Both entities are not in favor of a non-CID HOA. It just poses some additional issues in financing issues for them as well. So they are happy to sit down with staff to come up with some other alternatives and solutions to have their CC&Rs a little more enforceable, and maybe some additional policy that we could in the future come back to the council with, if that's something that the council wanted us to explore. And you should have copies of both of those letters. So additionally, there isn't anything really new to report on this effort. We kind of explored what are some other opportunities that we could take a look at. And there isn't really much out there other than what we have provided to the council in the past. So again, just to kind of recap, is that when there is common space, we do have HOAs formed with CC&Rs. We have the enforceable CC&R process that we are requiring on all of our new subdivisions. There is that option of the non-CID HOA, but again, there's a lot more disadvantages than advantages to that option. So that is not an option that staff would suggest exploring additionally. And with that, if there's any questions, we have Adam as well as Elizabeth that can help answer some of these questions.
So I have a question, Garrett.
Go ahead, Linda.
So where does a neighborhood or a community like Stone Creek fall, where there are CC&Rs, but there is no formal HOA, and so there's no management organization and no dues collected?
That's a great question. In the case of, and actually I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth so she can talk a little bit about what we could do for that scenario in newer cases. In terms of the existing older cases, that's a little more of a challenge for us as a city, as we don't have the mechanism to collect those fees to go back and maintain that area. It would likely be something that we as a city would have to take on ourselves as management.
Linda, you call that the Wild Wild West. There may be rules, but there's nobody to enforce.
Good point.
Yeah, so there's a couple things we talked about here. If there's a common area that an HOA is supposed to maintain and the HOA falls short of its obligations and they don't collect the dues, I know the county's struggling with this right now, and it's usually typically when an HOA is going to maintain something that is normally maintained by the public entity, but the HOA chooses to maintain it. In that case, we would put what we call a latent CFD over it, right? So we would set a max tax that would cover the maintenance costs. If the HOA fails and doesn't collect its dues, we would turn the tax on. But that's when there's something that needs to be maintained. That would normally be, like I said, maintained by the city. In these other areas where there are no common property maintenance, you know, we've been doing these enforceable CC&Rs. We've done them out with Woodside and Lennar and Cressley and, you know, Premier and Watt, and they've all recorded them. And basically in those enforceable CC&Rs, we took our property maintenance code and we folded it into the CC&Rs, right? So, but we already have that in our property maintenance code. We added a couple of other things, right, in those where it says you cannot park boats, RVs, or trailers, right, in the driveway or on the public street, right, period. You can't park them out there. So we've kind of, we've raised the bar a little bit through the CC&Rs, right? We've also said no garage conversions. You have to maintain those for your vehicles. We have one where they've said no pit bulls, right? That was that developer's choice to put that in to their CC&Rs. In terms of enforcement of those, the developers typically will have an architectural review committee that's very active until they don't have majority ownership anymore, or until the last house was sold. And I know Cressley is a great example, because anytime a property owner wants to do something, like they want to do some additional paving, which is a good example, they're supposed to submit to the architectural review committee, and then that committee will reach out to the city and say, is this okay? Can we approve the application? And we've had cases where we said, no, that's not okay. Tell them they have to take it out. So in a case where the developer is very proactive with their architectural review committee, it's working well, right? But this is kind of when they're still building and the developer's still engaged. I can't promise what's going to happen, 10, 15, 20 years from now when it's built out, right? But the way we've written the enforcement mechanism is, we have a right to go in there and enforce, just like we did with municipal code, but we also have a right to recover our costs. That's that enforceable provision in there. But the key for all of this is cooperation from the builder from the get-go, education, information to make sure the property owners don't inadvertently violate, right, a lot of the municipal codes. So outreach is key, right? And even though we've put a lot of provisions in the CC&Rs, how many homeowners are going to sit there and actually read their CC&Rs? Right?
Actually, you're supposed to. You've got to sign every last page.
And we definitely read every 300-page document.
Yeah, so I guess
right, but remember those fact sheets that we showed? Well, we created these fact sheets, right? And in these fact sheets, we kind of put the 4 biggest things, right? We said, and we asked them to put it in their sales trailer, and maybe we'll reach out and say, look, we're going to give you 5,000 more fact sheets. Mail them to all your existing residents. Make sure everyone that walks in the door thinking about buying a home. So the 4 things we highlighted on the fact sheets were, you have to put your garbage cans behind the fence. You can't park boats, RVs, or trailers. You have to maintain the landscaping in your front yard. And, don't overpave, right? Contact us if you're thinking of doing any non-pervious area on your property. So we kind of we highlighted those 4 big ones, right? The most common in that fact sheet. So to be successful, I think we're just really going to have to work on the outreach and education.
Well, I don't think there's anything we can do for Stone Creek, as much as I think that's too bad. Simply
right.
Because, we're too far down the road, and the CC&Rs had provisions for architectural review and all that sort of thing, and we all know that the builder didn't do it out of choice. And then, of course, when you talk about the common area, there is common area, there is open space to be maintained, but there's the small Mello-Roos that pays the park district, and I guess in some cases the city, to maintain that. So for all the concrete and all the whatever's parked in the front yards, there's just not a lot that can be done about that. It's the other issue that I am finding now with homeowner associations, whether you have a good management fee or not, the key to this is the resident organization that supposedly is the board of directors. And I think we have evidence that in Anatolia, they have a very committed, very active group of people who are on their board of directors. In at least one of there's 2 associations that I'm aware of over here, and one of them not so much. And even before the issues everybody having to do Zoom meetings. And so basically, instead of actually enforcing things that matter, like fences and yards and landscaping and whatnot, you know, they threaten things that have to do with aesthetics as opposed to functionality. And that's not making me happy. But, you know, they collect their dues and they have a meeting on a quarterly basis. And if you're really lucky, the meeting starts on time. And if it doesn't, then, oh, well, you can wait or you can not wait. So, you know, I don't know.
I guess it's probably easy to mock, you know, the homeowners associations. They had a pretty bad rap, I'd say, in public discourse, and it's probably deservedly so in some cases. I live in one, and in my case, there's only 17 houses here, 17 property owners, so it's very limited. There's no professional management. It's all done internally. Luckily, we got enough lawyers in the neighborhood. They can legally manage it for us. And it works very well, actually. We're small enough that neighbors watch out for neighbors. And that's probably the ideal, right? To have the neighborhood and the street where everybody can watch out for each other. Unfortunately, that doesn't work out on a larger scale. You can point to some organizations, probably extreme organizations like the neighborhood associations in Gold River. They have maintained those properties' values for decades. They should have declined significantly by now compared to the market at large, and they haven't, by and large because of the very strong CC&Rs and the professional enforcement of them. But that doesn't work for everybody. Lots of people don't want to live under that sort of regime where you don't even mow the grass in your front yard or have any say about the landscaping in your front yard. In Gold River, they even maintain the front of your house and your roof, as I understand it. So it's quite a different situation. It's almost like condoized housing in some ways. But, you know, the problem we've got is the one that every suburban jurisdiction and anybody with suburban style development faces, and that these houses decline in value over time, and the maintenance declines over time. The average income of people who live there decline over time. And there's this big old cycle where the infrastructure breaks and the test scores go down and the properties become more undervalued, and on and on and on it goes. And where does it stop? And that, in short, is why Rancho Cordova became a city. That process was happening here. People didn't want it. We wanted a different route. And what I'm happy about is that, as Darcy's described tonight, we found another route. And it's not through that extreme homeowners association that you'd see in Gold River. Although I think if a developer came to us and wanted that, we wouldn't necessarily balk at it. I don't think there's an absolute no there. But we found another way to enforce CC&Rs. And the point Linda just made, I think, is the critical one. Without having some mechanism to enforce CC&Rs are meaningless in a neighborhood. The only way they can be enforced is if an individual who has signed CC&Rs and lives in that neighborhood sues the neighbor who is violating them. And the court costs there, I'm told, are, you know, $1,000 to $2,500. So you could be, you know, spending $2,500 out of your pocket to get your neighbor to follow the CC&Rs about house color or concrete in the front yard or land, you know, whatever CC&R it is they're violating. I think putting the city on as the guarantor of CC&Rs in this way is the answer to the problem. We explored stronger HOAs. We explored trying to raise standards in the entire city of Rancho Cordova. And I think this is the correct way to sort of thread the needle and try to provide some long-term viability and health to these neighborhoods that they would not necessarily have otherwise. Because we're trying to swim upstream here, and the economic tide basically flows one direction with suburban development.
All right.
And this is a way, I think, to keep these properties more valuable, keep those neighborhoods safer, keep those schools more attractive. Everything that made people want to move there in the first place could stay in place longer with this kind of approach and support from the city.
Okay, Stacy, do you happen to have any public comment?
So we received a couple of written public comments via email. The first one is from Erin Teague from the Government Affairs. She's the Government Affairs Director for the Sacramento Association of Realtors. She's also here ready to speak in Zoom. And second, we received a public comment from Cornelius Burke, who is the Director of Legislative Affairs for BIA, who is also here in Zoom ready to speak to us. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with Aaron.
All right.
And those comments have been sent to the City Council as well as the appropriate staff. Aaron, we'll go ahead and start with you. You'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Council and
Hi, Aaron, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Erin Teague, Sacramento Association of Realtors. When looking at the item, we just encourage you to really define the goal, which you seem to be doing this evening, to try to what you're trying to achieve, and apply the tools that provide the enforcement mechanisms that you can put in place to achieve it. We think applying a standard that only is applicable to new development will not allow you to achieve the comprehensive citywide outcomes that you're looking for. It's important to note that non-CID HOAs do not have the same state standards as those created in common interest developments, and HOA costs can affect home affordability. We just request this evening to be included in the process if these policy ideas move forward as they're crafted, and we appreciate the consideration of the council.
Great. Thank you, Aaron.
Second is Cornelius. Cornelius, you've been unmuted.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This is Cornelius Burke with the North State Building Industry Association. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I just want to echo with our comments affiliated with the Sacramento Association of Realtors, and also it seems like this policy is trying to address code enforcement problems. So we recommend that we take a further look at code enforcement citywide. Other than that, love to continue the conversation. Love to continue working with your great staff. Want to make sure we get this right and make sure we don't add additional burdens and regulations on new development. Thank you so much. Thank you, Council and Mayor, for all that you do for the city. And once again, thank you, great staff, for all that you do. Looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So,
Garrett, I have another question for staff.
Go ahead, Linda.
So, Darcy, unfortunately, or Elizabeth, I didn't see anything in the description of either type of CID or any type of homeowner association that said that the city was going to be a part of it. Did I miss something?
The city is a third party to the non-enforceable or to the enforceable CC&Rs. We're a third party to that.
Okay.
As far as the HOA or the non-CID HOA, we're not a party to that entity specifically, but the enforceable CC&Rs, we are a third party to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're a third party. We have a right without obligation to enforce the CC&Rs, right? And we also have a right through that enforcement to recover our costs if we have to go in and enforce something. That's kind of that third party designation.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, and I think that's the right spot to be. We don't want to be imposing HOAs in every single development, but we do need some kind of guarantee that we can enforce a higher level of CC&Rs and kind of back up the residents who are buying that their properties will be maintained. So I don't think this intermediate non-common interest development HOA makes any sense. But the strategy we have of backing up the CC&Rs makes a lot of sense.
I see it. It was in that first paragraph, and I just missed it.
Okay.
Donald, go ahead. We haven't heard from you.
So is the question, and without Siri here, I guess we're not going to get this addressed, because one of the things that I think I felt around this question of whether or not every new development is going to have an HOA, at some point prior to me being on the city council, there was some sort of discussion and agreement that was going to be the direction to staff, yet it's not written down. It's not in our code anywhere to say that that's what it is. I thought the question tonight was whether or not we were actually going to say on the record that there's a majority of the council that wants to continue to give staff the direction so that whenever anybody wants to go buy land in the city, they understand that they're going to have to do this. But that's not what I think the question is tonight, and we're missing one of the newest council members. Therefore, I don't think we can put that to rest unless all four of us want to agree that that's what we're going to do. So, David, I know you're a big believer in this. I know you live in an HOA. Garrett and I in Siri do as well, and an enforceable one that actually finds people and does a lot of the things that I think you're a fan of. You know, and I don't know. I mean, I've lived in a very dysfunctional HOA. I would even say that down here in Anatolia that they've had their moments of dysfunction as well. I want to say in 6 years or 5 years down here, we've had 4 or 5 management companies. So it's not all roses and rainbows when it comes to this, especially when you ask certain residents. And I've also lived in a condo development that had an HOA, and it was a mess. And they were covering, like you said, David, everything: roofs, painting, the driveways, the pool, the little clubhouse, and stuff like that. And they were always underfunded. And so it's a mixed bag as far as the success of these long term, especially in maintaining community properties like a clubhouse or some other amenities. So I don't know, but I'm interested in you know, the long term viability of neighborhoods as well, and figuring out where we can adopt those things so that the city has the ability to step in if there isn't an enforceable body. I know I've dealt with a development, in a housing development with my last employer, where there were 31 lots, 5 of them got built, the other 26 of them sat vacant for 10 years. And when we bought the rest of those lots, you know, we changed the CC&Rs for a handful of things because we owned all of the lots. So there's even, or, you know, a majority of the vote, and I know the county wasn't a fan of what we were doing, but it was like, in the CC&Rs, it says right there, a majority of the homeowners can do that, and we own 26, and there were 5 others. Like, what are you going to do? So it also depends, and again, in that case, the county was really trying to make the case that because there wasn't a board, an adopted board to oversee the CC&Rs and the HOA, that the county was the de facto enforcer, and they were trying to say, we couldn't change it. We go, we have 26 votes. What are you talking about? So it's a mixed bag. So I guess my question is what is the question from staff? Because this non-CID doesn't sound like a very wise way to go down, because we're kind of shut out of the conversation, right? So the practice has been to have developers adopt these HOAs that we would then have some sort of code enforcement in lieu of an HOA that was active. Is that what the question is? And do we like that? Is that?
So the intent of coming back tonight was just to bring everything back full circle to explain what it is that we do. And we did look at other options. The non-CID it's an option when you don't have common space or a clubhouse that you need an HOA to have dues to maintain, but it's not one that staff would suggest going down the road. There's too many disadvantages and complexities with that. So at this point, what we're suggesting as staff is really just to maintain what we're doing, which is when there is that common area, we have the HOA, continue with the enforceable CC&R route, which does appear to be working. Like Elizabeth talked about, the flyers that we provide, the Good Neighbor Guides, which we provide to the builders, is another effort that we're doing to reach out. On top of that, there isn't really another option. I know Elizabeth had mentioned if the HOA fails, we can do, collecting of the fees to try to maintain it ourselves, but it really isn't a question. It was really the council had asked us to bring this back just to circle back and look at other options, and we explored, and there wasn't anything new other than what we're already doing and the non-CID, which we don't recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I think Donald, I can clarify. I think so. 10 years ago, and Linda can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going to say 10 years ago, we knew this problem existed. We had all these new neighborhoods coming. we can't just let them go with these unenforceable CC&Rs. And we thought at the time it was HOA or nothing, basically. Right. We thought HOA or nothing. And so at that time we said, wow, it's going to have to be HOA. But when we made that decision, that was during the real estate bust, and everything kind of stopped. So we talked about that and said, yeah, this is what we got to do, HOAs or nothing. But then nothing was happening. Right. And then you came along, and on the side, we were still trying to figure out, is there a third way here? And that's why earlier in my comments I referred to, we found a way to thread the needle, right, which is you don't need that full HOA to enforce these. You can have enforceable CC&Rs. And I don't remember, Elizabeth, you might remember, one of our builders actually brought us this model. I don't remember if it was Cressley or...
It was Woodside.
Woodside brought it to us.
At one of their communities. And we took a look and said, this is great, right? Let's do this.
Yeah, we're putting pressure on Woodside saying, got to do an HOA. And they said, what about this? Whoa, well, there's the legal, that's exactly what we're looking for. Yeah. So I think we found, my opinion would be we found the solution. We still allow an HOA. I don't think we reject it. Maybe we encourage it. I don't know, but we require that we have enforceable CC&Rs of some kind.
So that's my question, though, Dave. What you just said.
Common area as not just a clubhouse, because not all neighborhoods build clubhouses. You're defining common area more broadly than that.
Yeah. Common area.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Donald.
Can we go back to something David said, though? I want to be really clear about what I thought tonight's conversation was about as well. David just said we require this of all new development.
That's my suggestion.
Okay. Well, and I guess, and in my opinion, missing a brand new council member who hasn't been briefed on this, as far as I know, to decide tonight, I think is a little disingenuous. But we should take a vote on that, David. At some point, we should say this is a requirement. It's in the building standards. Anybody that wants to come here and build new housing and new subdivisions is subject to X. I just want to do that at some point. And with all due respect, David, you said multiple times, we as a city have agreed to this. Yet I've never even been asked that question, what I just said. I have never been asked, are you in support of an HOA in all new developments or some sort of enforcement mechanism? We have a practice, but we don't have a policy, is my position on this. And so now that, I guess, I pushed back before when you said that and said, I've never said that. But you've been saying the city has agreed to that, and there were 3 council members still on this council that were here before me, and I can accept that 3 of you agreed to something, but now that's not the case. And we really, in my opinion, give as much predictability to developers and anybody that's going to choose to come here to build homes that they should understand. And again, I'm not saying I'm against it, but we should agree to this is what the policy is. Write the stinking thing down so that when Elizabeth or Darcy meet with anybody that wants to put a new housing development in, that this isn't just something that we'd like you to do. This is something you're going to do or you're not going to do.
I like it. So I haven't got to talk about it yet, but I've been on the council for 6 years, and I'm still at the same discussion with Donald. I think it's time that we take a vote on how enforcement is going to happen. Either A, we all put HOA properties, or B, we put the CC&R ones that we just talked about. Go ahead, Linda. You want to say something?
No, just bring it back and ask staff to put it back on as an action item. That's easy. And okay. Logically, when you look at it, there's all sorts of things that the city originally agreed to or decided were a good practice. It's not formally adopted as a policy somewhere. My goodness, the policy manual would be 10 volumes. And just because nobody ever asked you your opinion doesn't mean that it's a good or bad idea. So let's just...
Well, no, but Linda, there have been claims that it is a policy, that it was agreed to, and that the city does it to everybody. But there have been examples of, during design review, that we told the developer that we're not going to approve their designs unless they agree to this. So it wasn't... Yeah, that happened. So, well, that's not where it's supposed to happen.
All right,
it's supposed to happen at the DA, not at the design review. So again, let's agree on what our stinking policy is and say it, and put it down in writing so that nobody is surprised later about it.
All right, so staff, we need something to come back to council that that lets us actually take a vote. So do you guys have enough to put together? Looks like we might want a couple options of flavors of this. Do you guys have enough to put together something for us, Cyrus, and come back?
I believe we do. I think it's, and also the direction is that we have to do this at a time when we have full council, and we will plan this for either next meeting or the meeting after that.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. All right, next subject, appointment, is this close? Cyrus, is this a close, or is this just regular one?
The council has to take the formal action to appoint negotiators, and then we adjourn to a closed session.
I'll move the item.
Okay. Second, take roll.
Was the motion by Linda or Donald?
Linda.
Thank you. And then Gatewood.
Donald did the second.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'll take second.
Councilmember Sander.
Aye.
Councilmember Budge.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Terry.
Aye.
Mayor Gatewood.
Yep.
Thank you.
We still need a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Do you want a motion, Adam?
You need a motion to
go closed session? Ask for a motion to close session, guys.
Okay.
Item number 18 says adjourn to closed session. Okay, that's fine. No, you don't need a motion, but you are adjourning to closed session. That's fine.